I have got this large Wildscape that I've been working on, and I have the frame that it's going to go in. You can kind of see my chalk outline, and I moved it up to a larger frame because I like the look of it better, which means I need to fill in the edges so that it can, fit the frame fully. And instead of doing just French knots, I decided I was going to add some bullion knots here. I could use a little bit of something else to break it up. This is the last of 7 pieces that I want to get done. I kind of just set myself my own little deadline. And I'm just going to fill it in with a mass of bullion knots. That's there. Oh gosh, I looked up once upon a time what they call a group gathering of knots. Is it nape or I don't know. I'll have to look it up again. I thought it was an interesting word, and then I promptly forgot it. And sometimes bullion knots can go a little bit faster. They can fill more space. It doesn't seem like it maybe at the time, but I think they're a good choice for a little bit of variety. And then I'll probably throw some drizzle stitches in there. And of course, there will be more grasses. I think I need to do another video on just the grasses. People have been asking me about them. This is much easier because this is in my stand. I find this a little more fiddly to do when I am holding just the hoop on my lap, but I rarely do that anymore. The first ones I do are really wonky, and I don't worry about it because I'm going to be, covering a lot of them up. So for a bullion knot, it is helpful to have a bullion needle or a milliner's needle because the head is the same width as the point, and that makes everything slide a little better. And I'm going to come back up right next to that. Leave it up there like a drizzle. And just wrap. This is another one of those stitches that I just think really looks even more effective when it's masked. And I was looking around at some of the ones I had done elsewhere on this piece, and I'm trying to find the thread that I used because I would really like to do more of it. So the reason I set myself a deadline is I really want to enter some calls for art, and the deadlines are the end of the month. And before I can do that, I want to take my pieces down to have them photographed. In the past, I've always done all the photography myself, and it's been good, but it can be better. It's just not my strength, and I'm okay with that. Something's wonky was catching under there. So I'm going to have them professionally photographed. And I'm kind of excited about that because I know when you have a good photographer, there is just no comparison what they can do. Let's see how much thread I have left. Probably not a real long one. I have no plan other than I know that this is going to tuck down into the box frame, so I don't want to put them too close to the edge. I'll just do French knots right there at the edge. This piece, I wouldn't say I have a love-hate relationship with it, but it's been a frustrating piece in a way because I know when I started it, I hadn't really finished any of the Wildscapes yet. I didn't know where I was going, and I was using up a lot of threads and yarns that I had just small amounts of, so I was experimenting. And then when I knew what I wanted to do, I had this big experimental piece, and somehow I had to figure out how to pull it together. So that's kind of where I'm at. There are a few issues that bother me. I'm not going to point them out because I don't think they're going to bother anybody else. It's one of those things as the artist you notice more than anybody else does. And I'm just going to tell myself, you can figure it out. By the time you get to the end of this, you can figure it out. Because when you put this much work into the thousands of French knots that are in here, I obviously do not want to let the piece go. I don't want to just toss it aside. I mean, I would if it didn't look right, but I think it's all going to come together. It's just doubting Susan time. Interesting. I don't know what this is caught on this time. It's only when the camera's on. It never happens when the camera's off. Okay, I'm lying. It does happen when the camera's off, but it happens more often when the camera's on. And again, if I don't quite make it to the end of this and I have an issue, I'm okay with that because I know, you know, I can cover it up, and this is just stuff that happens because I've got the camera on. I think it's this needle is a little bit fat for this. And so after I finish the current set of Wildscapes, I actually want to try and not plan out a thing, but I do want to kind of think about a rough idea for a plan. You know, how much grass do I want to add, water, where are the hills going to be, because I want to try and do something even bigger. This is on a 17-inch hoop, which is the largest hoop that I have at the moment, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is really thick. I think I would like to make something really big, like a massive. I have a wall in the sunroom that I would really like to put it on. So I just I got to plan it out in my head a little bit and then try and sketch it out a little bit. And then I have some seascapes I want to do. All right, let's just start crisscrossing here. But I'm definitely going to try and cultivate the habit of not having quite so many that are in the unfinished process, because it is frustrating me. It didn't used to, and now it's frustrating me, which means I need to develop a new habit. And I don't know about you, but developing a new habit is never an easy thing for me. But I've been, as I've been working on these, I've been paying attention to, you know, I know what threads I like best for the grasses. I know that I really prefer stitching with wool yarn. And if it's not going to be wool yarn, then I want it to be something of the non-matte variety. Now, I do like some of the shiny stuff I have elsewhere on this piece. I have got some kind of glossy floss, glossy floss, you know, because there's a shine on embroidery floss, especially on like a pearl cotton. And I don't necessarily care for the shine unless I'm using it for an effect. That's just me. But it's something I didn't realize. It's why embroidery floss has more of a shine. Whoops. Well, look at that, because this is so long. I managed to loop it under my... Oh, and that just made it worse. Well, there we go. So, you know, I've been paying attention to what floss is, and I really think I want to have a reduced palette, you know, so I'll be using up a lot of the stuff that I have. Dog hairs come free. I'll be using up a lot of the stuff I have and then only replacing in certain colors. I think that is going to allow me to take the pieces deeper. I really do, rather than having little bits and pieces. I mean, sometimes it's important to have a variety of the colors, but I'm not explaining it very well. I just really think I want to have not so many choices. I think limiting the choices of fibers, which, okay, yeah, I could go into the studio and say, okay, only pick 4 things, except I have a whole bunch of little bits of things. So I think I'm going to probably be making maybe just some masses of drizzles or something with the small amounts of wool yarn that I have, so I can use them up and know that I'm not going to buy them again. I buy a lot of my yarn from dyers on Etsy, and you know, it's taken me a while, you know, and it's not cheap. I mean, they're usually anywhere from $25 to $30 a skein, especially if they have the yak in them, and I really love the wool yak combo. Is a beautiful thing for me to stitch with. I'm always using fingering weight, but one of the things I do is if I see a color, because there aren't a lot of people doing greens, if I see a color I like and I buy it, and then I find out that it's not something that the dyer usually does, like a beautiful, beautiful green from one gal, and she says, I have no idea how I got that. I keep trying to replicate it and I can't. And that's frustrating for me because I want, you know, somewhat consistent dye results. You know, it's always going to be different because it's not commercially dyed, but at least in the same family. So now I am building a catalog of the dyers that I really enjoy using, and they've been consistent. And I've got right now, I think I've got 4 of them that I just love. And all the, you know, the greens are not going to be exact from the different dye lots, but they're going to be close enough that they're all going to blend. And as I'm thinking about, you know, a larger project, I want to be able to buy like maybe, I don't know, 5 skeins of 3 different colors from these gals so that I know that I will have enough. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to use up a lot of these little things. And I need to sell some stuff, sell some art. I think I'm going to have a live sale. I'm contemplating I might do one that's just books, because I have a bunch of books to sell, old books, and some art books, art, you know, how to do, you know, arts and craft books. So I'm thinking I might do one book sale, because that way everybody will know it's the option for it to go media mail or priority mail, flat rate, blah, blah, blah. Trying to figure out whether to do it during the daytime or the evening. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, please let me know. And then I'll do another one that's a paper sale. And I'm thinking I probably need to do a video that showcases all the things that are in my shop, because you guys, there are supplies in the shop. There's lots of fabric packs in the shop. There's actually a little journal kit in the shop. There is paper packs in the shop. So you can head over to the shop on my website and check those things out. And all the supplies have free shipping. So that can kind of save you a little bit of money. So see, I am just going to fill this in. And I think a lot of bullion knots here are just going to add to the effect. Then I will add French knots around it. And this is going a little bit faster than French knots. I don't have a way to judge, you know, how long I'm going to go. I'm just randomly putting my needle down. Okay, maybe we can make it a little longer, because that's just the way I've always done it. And, you know, sometimes you have habits and you're not even sure why you do things the way you do. But there you have it. And this one might not be long enough, but I can cover it up. I'm giving you all my behind the scenes things, you know. I don't try to make them perfect. You know me. If you've been watching any of my stuff, I am a recovering perfectionist, and I am just kicking all that other stuff to the curb and saying, nope, it does not need to be perfect, because I know organic is much better than perfect. Embrace the wonk in your work, because the wonk is where your heart lives. It really is. And gosh, I wish I'd learned that when I was younger. I really wish I had learned that when I was younger. This is kinda, I want to get one more. Okay, and this is probably going to be short, and that's okay. I'm sure people that have gone to classic embroidery classes, they would cringe. But you know what? This is me. And it's got a wonky in because I didn't check that. All right. But once they get piled up, you know, they're going to be pretty cool. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go off camera and I'll pile up a bunch more and then show you what it looks like. Okay, I realize that somebody's going to ask me how to do a bullion knot or a bullion stitch. So here is a short little tutorial. I have switched my needle to a fatter needle. So you can see here is a bullion needle and here is this other needle. And I did that because I've got skinny little bullions and I actually want some fatter bullions for what I'm doing. And once you get the hang of doing a bullion stitch, you know, I can pretty much do it with any needle. You just have to be aware that this is going to be smaller, so you have to wrap slightly loose and then just kind of baby it. So you're going to bring your needle up, and I'm going to decide where I want to go. I think I'm going to come back down over here. And now I'm going to come back up right next to, not in the same hole, but right next to it. All right, and I've got this loop of thread on top. And I'm just going to loop it around my needle. Okay, and again, because I have a needle that has different thicknesses at each end. Let's see here. Yeah, that's a little better. I just need to be aware of that. If I had pulled this really, really tight, it'd be harder to pull it all the way through. I just slide the loops down, so I'm just wrapping it around the needle. And then I'm just kind of laying it down so I can see there's where my hole is, and I know it's going to have to come up and over these existing bullions, so I need more length than I think I do. I often come up short because I underestimate spatial things, measuring things, not my strong point. So I just roll with it. I figure I can always fill in a hole with a French knot. I am never going for perfection. I'm not following anybody's pattern. All right, so that's going over. So whenever I think I'm done, I add 3 more because it's just Susan math. All right, and then I'm going to pull this through, and I just kind of hold on to the loops here at the end, and I pull it through, and then you kind of have to work it down. I'm going to get rid of all that other stuff, and then you can sort of baby it a little bit. Again, I'm piling mine up until you get it smooth, and then you're going to go back down in that same hole. And if you don't get the same hole you get right next to it, it's good enough. And that's all it is. And then I tend to come up right next to it again and say, okay, because again, I'm trying to mask these. I just think it looks better. That is my personal preference. That's not a whole lot of thread, Susan, so let's pay attention to that. Sometimes I forget to pay attention to how much thread I have left, and I try and do a really long one, and that is not quite as successful. So I'm going to come back up right next to where I brought it up originally, and I want to make sure I have as much of the thread up top there to play with. And I'm just going to loop it until I have no more. There are a lot of things you can do with manipulating a bullion knot. I don't tend to do a lot of that. This gives me the effect that I want, but you know, someday, you never know. I do not have any more thread down there, so I might have overestimated. That happens. And that happens. I didn't have enough yarn or thread, and so I pulled it right out. I'm glad that happened so I could show you it's not the end of the world. It's really not. Now sometimes when I have a really short one like that, I'll just grab another needle. This is not a bullion needle, but it's okay. I can still do it. I just, again, have to be aware that I can't make it really tight. This would be just fine for a short one. It's not going to be as fat, so maybe I'm going to do this on the underside because I used that other needle because I wanted some fat bullions. All right, but for doing a short one, it'll be just fine. Actually, this will be good. You can see how the different size of the needle affects the size of the loop. Now, of course, I could use my regular bullion needle and do double the thread, and that would give me a fatter loop too. I think that's as far as I can stretch it. Let's see, it still works. And you can curve it around if you want, but I did not plan for that, so there we go. And you can see, now this is a wonky one, and that's okay because I'm not done there, but I am going to pull them up into the French knots because it's just like if you're doing paper collage, you want to blend them. If I just did a pile here, to me, it wasn't going to give the effect that I want. So I am going to pull some up into the French knots. I just don't have as much ease because this is very thick, so it's really hard to push through. So I kind of have to poke around to find a place that will work. All right, I'll come back and show you when I have a lot more of that filled in. So there you have it. I have filled in this area with a bunch of bullion knots or bullion stitches. I'm never sure which way you're supposed to call that. And as you can see, it's helped really to blend this green and this part and this part. I don't know, it just sort of blends everything together. It was what I felt was missing in trying to balance this corner of the piece. And now it's time to go on to the next corner so I can get this one done. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And as always, you're welcome to come join us over in the Facebook group.